As the World Cup in France later this year approaches, question marks still remain over who will start at fly half. England tried 4 different 10-12 combinations over the course of the Six Nations with varying degrees of success. And we've got a great special guest for you today giving his view on the conundrum. Joining me, Chris and Brendan is former England fly half Olly Barkley. We hope you've had a good week. Quite simply, there's one thing very firmly on the agenda today, and that's the age-old England fly half debate. Farrell versus Smith was a question that yielded different answers from different people over the Six Nations and has done so for the last 3 years or so. And we've been meaning to debate it, but we're waiting for a fitting special guest. And we've got one today joining me, Chris and Brendan in former England fly half Olly Barkley. How are you, mate?
I'm good, thank you, mate. How are you all?
Very
good. Good, we're good. So you just told us you're calling us from Bath. What are you up to nowadays?
I been in property for the last 5 years when I finished playing. I started a company about 10 years ago. I went sideways into that when I finished. And then I started a charity with a guy that you might all know called Ed Jackson, called the Millimetres to Mountains Foundation, about 4 or 5 years ago now, which is going great guns and is doing some pretty cool stuff. He's currently crossing Iceland. Absolute header that he is, unassisted. I think, yeah, I mean, he's constantly doing stuff that makes his wife worry about him and question their relationship weekly, I think. But that's been amazing. We've done a lot of stuff there. And then 2 years ago, me and Ed also started a rum company, a rum brand, which we're about to launch in 2 months' time, which has been very exciting. We've got a team of about 12 of us now, so that's growing quite quickly, and we're doing some really, really exciting stuff there. So that's going to be mostly happening in London. So that's why I'm moving to London tomorrow to go full time with Vapora, it's called. So it's my life is very different now. I don't I very, very rarely pick up an oval ball. I very rarely see an oval ball unless it's on TV, but I like it. It's very different from the way I used to live life, but it's the diversity and the variety is something that really appeals to me, and I like doing quite creative stuff of things like involved with music and events and sort of the brand stuff around. So yeah, a big difference from the old days, but I really enjoy life at the moment, the variety and the more sort of level pace of things away from selection and injuries is welcome.
That's a good mixture, Ollie, isn't it? The rum and the housing and the property. So when people find that they can't get on the property ladder, you give them something to take the blues away. Very nice.
Or if they don't want to buy it, you get them really drunk and then they end up they're buying it for the right price. So either way,
either way you win.
Yeah.
Good.
The property has, like, to be honest with you, has been a bit of a. I've worked very hard at the last 5 years, but I've taken more of a back seat with it now, and I've put it back all under management, just because, mate, it's quite stressful, and I want to be able to concentrate more time and take more of the approach I had with rugby, really, where I was like very singular, very focused. I had 1 or 2 things going on in my life, and they would dedicate real time and love to it, and that's kind of where I feel with the rum now. It's just to not distract my life with lots of other bits in the periphery and just try and concentrate on a couple of things rather than have 4 things flying around.
Do you have as many properties as Mike Cap?
I hope so. Yeah. he's old school. he's old hat. Game's changed now.
Ollie, how do you start a rum company? Because obviously, you know, rum is a sort of inherent alcoholic drink, mainly for the West Indies, I understand. Do you invent a new rum, or do you find a little known rum and dive in and parachute in and market that? I mean, how did it happen?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually, mate. One we've actually not been asked in its origin before, but a lot of rums, whether they're premium or quite, basic, or quite entry level, most of them will go to the islands. They'll find either a distillery or a number of distilleries and bring together different batches and ages to make their own version of a rum, but essentially it's already been made in those distilleries. They then might combine some colours and some additives and some of the stuff you get on the shelves these days that's got all manner of flavors in it. So, but we wanted to do something that was quite different. We wanted to do something that was made in England, that was distilled in the old hat way in copper pot stills, because you get a much cleaner, heavier mouth on the liquid. And then all our botanicals are grown. We sourced them all naturally from around like the best places depending on the season, but it's all done in England, which is really rare. And we actually started ours from scratch, to be honest. It's taken us about 1.5 years with this bit of a, he's actually, you sort of appeal to you, Chewy. We're doing it with a doctor of yeast. He has a doctorship in yeast. That is an actual thing.
Well, it's more relevant than Latin, isn't it?
Yeah, man, exactly. And who would have thought that? But yeah, but he's working with him has been pretty incredible. Like understanding the processes and tweaking it and stuff. So now we have a very I mean, in our opinion, a very special tasting bottle of rum, which has been distilled a number of it's quite a proprietary process. So we've made sure that there's no bullshit around how it's been made and how it's been branded. So yeah, we're pretty excited about it. We put a lot of time and love into it. It's not just been a do it in your back garden, get it over from the island, stick a label on it, and get it out on the shelves. It's been a bit more than that. So.
So an English rum, you can put the old George Cross on it or whatever. It's made in England, drunk in England.
It's made in England, yeah. It's called Vapora, which is named after an English moth, which is native to England. And there's a bunch of symbology around the moth, but yeah, the Vapora moth is native to England and does loads of cool shit. I mean, when we research moths, you go, they are ridiculously cool creatures, pretty funky stuff. Yeah,
this is a conversation I never thought I'd have with you.
Yeah.
There is a specialist rum bar in Bath, isn't there? Is that where you got the idea, Ollie, by any chance?
No, mate. They've been there. They're very good there. Actually, we took our liquid into them to trial it during some of the testing periods. But mate, it just started. I mean, just honestly, I've always loved rum. It popped up. We drank a lot of it, like a lot of people did. Well, a lot of other stuff during lockdown. And I started to just really enjoy it and sort of become quite interested in it. And then it was a kind of a time as well where like a few people were struggling in our group that were like for various reasons for lockdown and work and family and relationships and stuff. And the moth was a sort of a symbol of like sort of transformation and positive change and the rest of it. So we've started to see it pop up loads more in high-end restaurants and on cocktail menus. So I had some mates in Diageo and said, look, I'm noticing this happening. Are you seeing the same thing? And they're like, yeah. We think the premiumization of rum is about to happen. Like the next couple of years, gin's haven't had its time, tequila's having its time, mezcal, and we think rum's about to have its time. So we thought, fuck it, let's give it a whack.
Good man.
You said Vapora, didn't you?
Vapora, yeah, Vapoura.
Okay, I've never heard of the moth myself, but obviously we'll keep an eye out for that. You're not the first guest we've had on the podcast who started an alcoholic drink. Do you guys remember when we had Jake Woolmore on? He started XV Gins.
I must have been absent that week.
Yeah, okay. Well,
did you just say, Oliver, that you've never heard of the Vapora moth?
Yeah, I did.
What university?
What
university are you at again? Tell me your university again.
Tell me the result in the predictions league again. Yeah, Jake Woolmore, he has XV gins, and it has 15 ingredients in the gin, and I put him on the spot and asked him to name all 15, and it's fair to, I think he got about 8.
Oh no, did he?
He didn't do so well.
He is a prop.
He is a prop.
Yeah, I know your product.
So look, with the time pressure, let's get into the fly half debate. Ollie, you said you're not that involved in rugby. I'm guessing you wouldn't then like to be a part of this fly half conversation nowadays, going up against Ford, Farrell, Smith.
No, not at all, man. I still watch it, and I still look very keenly on the. I think I'm taking a more of a keen eye on the England team recently, with Borthwick being coach, who I've played a lot of rugby with and good friends with and have a lot of respect for. So I watched it far more keenly recently than I have done in many years. But I mean, I'm not an avid watcher, but I mean, whenever it's on, I will watch the rugby. I read about it. So I probably am not at the where I was 5-6 years ago, but I'm definitely probably still equipped to be able to comment on such a conversation. I hope.
Just on Borthwick, Ollie. Just on Borthwick, Ollie. I mean, I remember conversations with you in the past where you really extolled his virtues as a captain. I mean, I think I'm right in saying you thought he was a pretty great captain. Do you consider him? And I know he's a mate of yours, so these things are often not easy to talk about in certain ways. But do you think he's absolutely the right man for the England job? You know, sort of temperamentally, because we all know how shy he can be and how difficult he finds some of the public-facing role, which is a big part of the package these days. No one doubts his analytical capacities and all the rest of it. But do you think he's a guy who can come through any initial difficulties and make a real fist of this job?
I think it's a really pertinent point, mate. I think it's that Borth is quite shy by nature, but he's also incredibly strong in that shyness. You know, like he's very stern in his convictions. He doesn't doubt himself an awful lot at all. He's very open. I mean, he's probably one of the most impressive. I mean, I'm not. We are mates, but I'm very happy to offer an honest opinion as I always have done. But he's one of the most impressive people I've met in rugby, bar none, in terms of his credibility as a human, his integrity, his work ethic, his ability to learn systems and processes that weren't natural to him, like attacking structures, understanding strategy, pitch position, all those things which weren't that didn't come that easy to him at the start. He picked up very, very quickly. So his ability to learn is incredible. I think, can he handle the increased exposure that role brings? We will see. Because I mean, I'm not doubting Borthwick in that, but you know, I'm only saying we will see because it's on a far bigger level from running the show at Leicester, right? As we all know, it's a far bigger ship to steer than that, and it comes with certain pressures from externally. There's far more media coverage, which invites far more colourful personalities to comment on your position, which they are already doing and will continue to do. But that's just the life and nature of that role. But in terms of the right person to lead the country and to wield a culture and forge a team that plays for each other and feels like you're all there mucking in for one another. And that, by one another, I mean the kit guys, the coaches, the guys that pick up the laundry at the hotel. Like, he will make sure that everyone feels a part of that, and that is something that I think has been severely lacking in that team for many, many years. I don't think it was really there for a lot of the time that I was there, you know, if I'm honest, that we are playing for each other and our coaches are here for us and we're here for our coaches, and let's stick our gun over our shoulder and go after it. I think that is you know, the look at the sides that have had that in, I mean, on a more close to home basis, sides like Exeter and Saracens, Exeter in particular, who have that in buckets, are able to, they're a different team now, but in the start, they were able to beat people far better than them through that culture, you know, like, and that was forged by Rob Baxter, and that wasn't something that came quickly, but I think that's something that Borthwick has the ability to do, that out of respect, and I'm really respecting and understand the value around bringing how important that culture is, and not just, you've been picked for England, I know what I'm doing, you need to play for me, which I think has probably been the case for probably a few years now. I don't, you know, show me a side that's ever been consistently good and successful with that approach of, this is the way we're playing, you're lucky to be playing for England, this is how we'll play, and this, you know, it happens on a short-term basis. But All Blacks, another great example in years gone by, culture came first. Then they often didn't pick players that were better than the person that they did pick, but they felt that person was far more successful for the culture. And as a result of that, people bought in, and good players became great players, and good teams became great teams, and then won one World Cup. So I think what we're trying to get at here is culture, right? And that culture is crucial. You look at the teams around the Premiership, and you boys will know them better than most, having been to clubs, and you get the feel when you walk in, and how people treat you, and how they welcome you, and how they talk to each other. And that is something that Borthwick is massive on. And I think it's something that England will really, really benefit from. It just won't happen overnight.
I think that's really interesting. I agree with everything you said, Ollie. I think that's as good a summary of what Borthwick can bring to a thing. And interesting, you mentioned Baxter. Even though Rob is much more comfortable now with the public-facing role and does a lot of it, there are obvious similarities between Steve and Rob in terms of rugby vision and approach, and the importance of culture and the things that you talk about. There are obvious similarities, I think.
Yeah, mate, I agree. I really agree. I think they will have different approaches to that culture for sure. I know some of the bus rides back from away games next to get pretty hairy. I'm not sure Borthwick would be up for that, but in his own way, in his own very integral, respectful, open, charming way, Borthwick will employ that, and that'll be pretty much top of his list, is creating a team and a culture that wants to play for each other, that believes in where they're going as a team. I don't think he'll be doubting, pardon me, where they are. I mean, there's fucking horrific results. Let's not get away from that. But it will be a process, and I don't think, even though the World Cup is on the doorstep, I don't think that you can't judge. Maybe jumping the gun on a question here, Ollie. If I am, I apologise, but I mean, it's very easy to judge someone on those results, right? Because they are bad. They're really bad. But I have lots of faith in him, and I don't think he'll be panicking. He will be very upset and disappointed at those results, because he's a very proud man, and he puts more hours into that job than I think most people around the world will. But he'll have a plan for sure. He will have a plan, that is for certain, and he'll have a very, very well measured, long-term, methodical plan.
Do you think then he's got his answer for the 10 he wants in the World Cup final, should they get there now?
100%. Borthwick does not do anything without knowing exactly where it's going and how it's going to end up. Even going to the shops to buy his groceries, like, he will make sure that is to the point. Yeah, I mean, there is a plan here. I'm sure that the one caveat there is performance, fitness. That will obviously play a part in how that selection goes, but there will be a plan. Like, I mean, I've got no doubt that he will want Marcus Smith to play a more prominent role, because Borthwick does want to play an attacking game. Like, Borthwick didn't play in a very he wasn't a flamboyant player, but he did in the teams that I played in. He does respect and understand the value of an all-court game. An all-court, I don't mean you go side to side and front to back all the time, but understanding how to play in wet weather, dry weather, different teams, different defenses. He has a great understanding of that, and I just don't think you can, with all due respect to him, I don't think Farrell offers that anymore. I think he has a really good 1 or 2 court game, clay perhaps, or grass, but not grass. Maybe indoor hard court, but I mean the utmost of respect. Like, he's been one of England's greatest players for a long time, and I know from talking to Borth that he still brings an enormous amount to the team, more than most people, I think, in that week. And that was a lot of Borth's value was not just on the pitch on a Saturday as a player, but the way he could forge a cohesive team and plan during the week. So when we arrived Saturday, like 80% of the work was done in theory. Preparation, mindset, clarity, all those key things. I think Farrell plays a huge role in that for England, you know, being able to bring that clarity, leadership during the week. They're all cliched things, but they're all vital in a test week, because you've got people that are nervous and you're bringing people together very quickly and often against, you know, very precious situations. So it's important you have those personalities around you. And I think he'll still play a crucial role in the World Cup. But I'd like to think that if Marcus Smith can consistently show he's able to manage different types of game, and by that I don't just mean manage a kicking game in the dry against really good teams. I mean, like, it's just, you know, how do you managing a game? I think it's just about that. It's about how do you play in the last 10 minutes when you're losing? How do you play in the last 10 minutes when you're winning? How do you open games? How do you work yourself into a game when you're not playing that well or you're not fit? You know, there's managing games comes in very different forms. As a fly half, it's very different as other players, but as a 10, there's some very different forms of managing games. And I think he'll want to see that, but he'd also know that if they're to win that World Cup or have a chance to get into those knockout stages at the end, Marcus Smith has to be playing well and he has to be in that 10 shirt, I think.
Ollie, one very interesting insight you might have for us. I would say you're quite a different player to Marcus Smith, but the one thing you absolutely share is that you were labelled as the wonder kid. You know, you were capped by England before you played senior rugby. You know, you came straight out of Colston School, in effect. I was there in San Francisco, 2001, when you came off the bench. And Marcus, you know, Marcus is identified as an 18-year-old schoolboy at Brighton, brought into the squad. So he had to wait a bit longer for his cap. So you got that sort of mantle of expectation hanging over you, and it can be quite difficult. I mean, I'm sure it's wonderful to be capped as an 18, 19-year-old for England, but that's a lot achieved very early in your life, and you're still learning the game, and suddenly you're not treated as a promising 18, 19-year-old. You're meant to be the real deal, the real McCoy at 19. So how did you struggle with that?
Yeah, massively. I mean, to put my cards on the table, I think Marcus Smith is. He's probably most talented player I've seen. One of the most talented players I've seen in England, I think. Yeah, full stop. Yeah, I mean, Jason Robinson was athletically incredible. I think Marcus Smith, in terms of what he can do, his understanding of space and his athletic ability to find holes and manipulate space, but is fucking wicked to watch. Like, I love it. I love watching him play. So I think he's on a different level to where I was. I think in terms of the pressure around that, I mean, I don't think that's affected him. If I'm honest, I think what has affected him is he's still young, he's still learning. I don't think having this pressure on him is affecting him. I think he's just a young kid. He's still, you know, bouncing around like he's like on a pogo stick, and he's still got bits to learn. But that's just also, it comes with I mean, having a very unique athletic ability as a 10, it sometimes can be quite crippling for game management, because Cipriani had this when he started becoming quicker. Is the danger of having athletic ability at 10 is you want to use it all the time. You want to break. You want to go after people. You might try and run yourself out of trouble when it's probably not the best idea to do it, because you back yourself athletically. You go for it. Got Cipriani into trouble. It can get Smith into trouble. The guy that managed to harness both those things the best of anyone was Dan Carter. You know, he had that athletic ability to break from anywhere, but he always picked the right moment. And that's why he's the best there ever was, the best probably ever will be for the next. He was able to marry those two things up. I think when Marcus can marry those two things up and not just think, I've got a wicked footwork, I can make people look stupid, and I'm really quick over 20 meters, I can do this from wherever I want, is picking and choosing when to use that ability. Did I struggle with it? I definitely struggled with it. Yeah, I think much different environment. I think I grew up in that sort of the end of the old school era when like it wasn't that help, you know. Like I had people like Mark Regan shouting down my neck, and you know, it's just like Kevin Mag telling me to just fucking kick it up, and you know what I mean? Mag's like, I'm sure you know all about this, but those boys, I mean, love them, but they were not helpful. I mean, they were not helpful. I love two of those boys more than they're absolute personalities. And when I started to play, get my straps and started to play a few games and play well and stuff, they were great. But I mean, I understand, I get it as well. Like, they didn't want to have to manage this 19-year-old kid coming, didn't really know what he's doing, but they weren't very helpful.
Ollie, we all have our crosses to bear, Ollie, and Regan and Mags were two of them.
Yeah, mate, yeah, they were fun crosses to bear. I'll say that they always packed up a bus journey. But yeah, also now teams are far more organised back then. Like, it's much easier for 10s to come in and 9s and 15s, perhaps young ones, because there's way more structure and understanding around how the game is to be played. Back then when I started, it was like 2 phases. Like, and you didn't go over the gain line in the first phase, you're fucked, because you had nothing organised. No slow ball drills. There was no kicking structure. There was no nothing. It was like, I mean, it didn't even be boxed from anywhere on the pitch. In the middle of the pitch, it's like, the game's different now. It's way more organised, way more structured. And if you have, a fly half, even a young one that wants to learn and can take in team structure and strategy, then it's far easier for them to. Not easy, but far easier for them to follow a game plan now with the structure and strategy that's around.
Where do you think, Ollie, in this discussion, where would George Ford be in the conversation? Where do you think he is now? And where do you think he would have been but for an injury which has cost him, I don't know, a big chunk of time? Because obviously he played with Borthwick at Leicester. I mean, he pretty much kept Leicester up. Then he was a handsome contributor in them winning the title. And everyone sort of assumes that he's the best game manager in town, George, in terms of strategic understanding and tactical nous and all that kind of stuff. But there are other aspects of the game, I guess, where he's not as strong as Smith or not as strong as Farrell. I mean, where would you put him in the batting order at the moment? And where would he have been but for the injury?
I'll caveat this by saying I haven't watched him play closely this year, but I think he's been played very, very well all season. I just think personally, he's that player that is exceptional in the Premiership. I don't think he's going to give you what you probably need in those big games at international level. And I think my feeling is, if they're not going to give you that at that level, then why pick them? That's my personal opinion. Farrell could do that. Farrell would play as well for England against New Zealand as he would against Sale on a Friday night. He was that consistent. Marcus Smith, I think, has that ability to play better at international level against people like the All Blacks in Australia than he can against Exeter at home. I think he has that, not now, but I think he'll have that. He has that because he's managed well, both at Quins and with England. I think there's a very good chance that'll happen. But I don't. For me personally, I think George Ford is a very, very talented boy and has played some wicked games for England. But I just don't think consistently, for me, he will give you what you want against the big three, the big four now.
And the other thought following on from that, then the other thought that occurs to me, and you went through the whole 10-12. Mix and match. Different coaches had very different ideas about what you were, what you could be, what you should be. There were times when you played a loaded 12 when you were reinstituted in the number 10 shirt, and then the coach at the time, who I think was Gary Gold, said, "Well, we'll be interested to see Ollie play at 10, and and he can play his own game until it doesn't work." So he wasn't one for experimenting, Gary, I don't think very much. But no. So with Farrell, if we accept that there are whole chunks of Farrell's contribution to the England side, which England need at the moment, and there are things about Farrell that you wouldn't want to lose, does that make him still a pure 10 and it's just a shootout between him and Smith for the starting position with one on the bench, or does Farrell have any kind of role at 12?
I don't like him as a 12 anymore. I think.
But you did it one time.
I think I just need to check myself on that anymore. I mean, I don't know. Did I? I mean, he's definitely lost. He's never had too many yards, but I think it feels like he's lost a yard the last year and a half, last 2 years, and that I think when you already don't have that much zip at 12. My concern with 12 is him at 12 is when you go off that second pass to him, if you get a 12 like Slade, like Ollie Lawrence, who can actually play it, he can handle a second receiver because he's got such good hands. When you have a player like that who is dangerous, who has zip, who can threaten the line off second pass, it makes the defense check, which gives you space out wide. It asks more questions of the defensive line because they can't leave. Like, they have to get an eye on you. Whereas I think when you go to foul off a second pass, there's no real threat there. And as a result of that, I think the defense can almost, like, it can handle most things. He doesn't have a bullet pass, so he can't overcome his speed with a flat ball, like super flat ball. So I don't particularly like him at 12. I think it's a straight shooter out of 10. I think that there is, I mean, I really like Ollie Lawrence as a player. I think he needs more time to be able to, and he can give you a lot. I think with Slade, Tuolangi, and I'd like to see more of Slade. I don't think he's really kicked on that I'd like to see in the last year, perhaps. But I think he's another incredibly talented bloke who can also defend away from just having a wicked attacking game. So I think there's enough quality there in the centre to leave Farrell out and do a straight shoot out of 10 with Smith. Personally, it's just there's it's just, is there enough calm in that 10, 12, 13? Is there enough in the big games to be able to, like, settle things down? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But the only way you get calm is by experience, right? So
do you think England have missed a trick? Or, well, not just England, Exeter, maybe. When Henry Slade first came into the side, he looked for all the world as though he would be, if you were creating a perfect 12 in a laboratory somewhere, you'd have a bloke. I mean, Henry's not the smallest, so he's big enough to survive the crunch. We know he's a defensive captain down there, so he knows his onions in that respect. And he's got an all-round kicking game and an all-round passing game. And you're thinking, what is not to like about Henry Slade at 12, unless you're just completely transfixed by the prospect of a basher, a pure basher at 12.
Yeah.
You're just going to play off the one-up smack and then play the rest of your rugby off of that. So Slade's played so little at 12, I've never been able to fathom it.
Yeah, no, I don't understand it either. I think the only way, not the only way, but one of the ways, like, if you like to play a wide game and you've got, like, you want to catch someone more creative in the 13 channel and try and create things in the wider channel, that can be quite fun to do that, because have a 13 that can handle the ball, almost like a Josh Baxendale. Remember Josh Baxendale?
Yeah.
That really well. Charlie would play a very different defensive system. Charlie would possibly play him really flat and early, and he'd go and create all the stuff much further out, and then just have a battering around at 12. It's how you want to play the game. But I agree. Like, I think, Slade does have everything that you'd probably want in a centre, in an inside and an outside centre. He can kind of do everything. I just don't feel like he doesn't have that sort of, like, I don't know. Don't feel like he's had that hunger and appetite to actually have a crack at things last year. I don't know why, but when I've watched him play, he just looks like a class act where he moves and passes and runs. But I just don't feel like, I don't feel like that, like, appetite from him to really go after defences, which I think he used to have in abundance. But yeah, I agree. I'm a massive Slade fan. So I think I agree with you. I think he's got all of the nuts and bolts there to be wicked. It's just how where he's played and how he's asked to play in that position, I think.
So it sounds, Ollie, that you'd be quite happy with a Marcus Smith 10, Ollie Lawrence 12, Henry Slade 13. Is that what we're coming down to? Because if you pick Marcus Smith at 10, does that help determine who you want at 12 and 13?
I don't think. Yeah. Well, it depends how you want to play the game, but I think in terms of all-out attacking threat and the ability to defend, I mean, like I've been quite impressed with how brave Marcus Smith is when he chucks himself into people at 10. I don't think he doesn't want to shirk, the heavy stuff. Slade and Lawrence both are, defend well. I think you've got, and I start with that because there's obvious attacking quality with those three, but they've got to be able to keep the door shut, right? And they have that. I mean, I'm a spectator, man. I want to see some fun stuff. So I'd love to see those three play. They're exciting boys. It's just how does the team want to play around it? Do you put Tuolangi back in there? I don't know how they want to play the game. It's hard to see at the moment, isn't it? Exactly how they're trying to play the game. And then you can kind of, I think once that starts to emerge, like your patterns and structures and how they play in different ways, and I can probably say, okay, cool, that would suit that style of play, or that person would be great there to try and fulfill that style, that strategy. But it's hard to do that at the moment. But from a pure spectator point of view, Brendan, I get the guns out and get them running. I reckon that's my vote.
And you've got the option. You could bring Manu on for big minutes. Elliot Daly hopefully will be fit again this summer. I always think 13 has always been his best position, even though he's hardly ever played there. You've got options off the bench if that's how you want to go as well. Yeah,
absolutely. I think having Manu on the bench is great. I don't think he is as effective to start. I think you get him in bursts, but I don't think bursts is good enough, really. But get him on for 25 minutes to run riot and just say, I need 5 massive carries from you in 20 minutes, then, and sometimes 2 of those can be game changers. So I think he's a great guy to bring off the bench if he's mentally right in that role, having started so much. I think having Farrell there is, nice. It's great to have him there but he needs his goal kicking needs to be better at the moment. And his ability to close out a game, and control games from 20 minutes and just kind of, dare I say it, play a bit more stagnant style of rugby, but sometimes that's needed depending on how the weather goes and, how teams are playing. But having those options there, I think is, it's quite a nice thing to have. I just don't know where the England management feel they're at with that debate. I mean, I don't know. Who knows where they're at? But I think they're not going to win a World Cup with Owen Farrell at 10. I don't think. And that's with the utmost of respect, because I think he's done some amazing stuff for that team over the years. I just think that it's time for a change.
Ollie, can we squeeze 10 minutes out of you? Is
that
cool, or is that really kind of
tight? No, mate, that's fine.
All right. Well, I think this will be very on the spot, actually, but I'd love to do our quick fire question section with you, which I think I forgot to tell you about, so that's my fault. But it's literally just 15 quick fire questions about you, your rugby career, etc. So if you're good with that, then we'll get going with that before we finish with 5 more minutes on the fly half backline debate.
Yeah, mate, fine.
Cool. Nickname?
Bucks.
Best rugby memory?
First start at Twickenham against Wales.
Most embarrassing rugby memory?
Order.
I've for a few. Getting my nuts burst on the pitch against Worcester.
Oh, you did a Shelford?
No, it didn't come out. Split on the inside. Brutal. And then the wider story is for another time, but very, very funny also.
Pre-game shoot.
My musical taste was a bit different back then. Probably something involving the collaboration between Linkin Park and Jay-Z.
Nice. Post-game meal.
Probably Jerry's Bangers and Mash.
Best player you've played against?
Tanu Munga.
Best player you've played with?
Nicky Bendenon.
Nice. Favorite player right now?
Marcus Smith.
Rugby idol?
Good one. Probably Carlos Spencer and probably Andrew Mertens.
Nice. Favorite stadium?
Stade de France.
Favorite gym exercise?
Anything involving jumping and bouncing.
Oh, interesting. Why?
It's just fun, jumping in and out of boxes onto boxes. way more fun than sitting there and putting up weights all the time. Yeah, anything involving jumping and hopping and
Occupation if rugby didn't exist?
As I feel now, or as I would have felt back then if it didn't exist?
I don't know. Whichever speaks to you more.
So I don't know, something involving traveling, something moving around the world.
Superstitions?
One of the last to walk out and not sprinting at, like just walking out quite calmly, is always something that I tried very hard to do, no matter how nervous I was.
Rugby law you would change?
I mean, I think the tackling rules are getting ridiculous. Not in its entirety, but I think they need to be looked at. That boys have to be protected, but part of the whole gladiatorial, combat is a big part of the game. I think, and they're in danger of taking that away. I think you play rugby with the knowledge that it's dangerous, and that's part of the fun and excitement.
So I'm guessing you think the waist high tackles is nonsense.
I mean, it's fucking ridiculous. Yeah.
Best thing about working in rugby?
Being your mates, being outside.
Nice. Awesome. That was very quick fire. Awesome stuff. Right. 5 minutes, very quickly. Obviously, I can hear from you that you're swaying towards Marcus Smith in the 10 shirt, and I was too. And then obviously the France game happened, and you spoke about England's awful results. That was the low point. And obviously Smith was given his audition, and for some he failed. For some it was down to circumstances. Pack didn't give him front foot ball. He didn't get quick ball from 9. What did you make of that test, so to speak? And did you think it was mainly down to circumstance?
Yeah, I mean, there are often perfect storms in rugby. I think that was probably one of them, in the sense that he didn't get great ball. He didn't play very well. You came across a very, very, very good French team where 3 or 4 players played even like world-class players played out of their skin, even by their world-class standards. If you get that, you're going to get an absolute cock up, And I think that was one of those situations. They're probably not going to happen again for a very long time, but I don't think it's fair. I mean, I just think that's the old England. Old England would have chucked out a player on the basis of that, and I don't think that's fair to do. It's important to look at the bigger picture. How did people play around him? How did England play as a team? How did France play? And is he going to learn from that? Yeah, of course he is. I don't think that game will define him. But I don't think it's a personality thing as well. I think if you're going to put someone like that, a young kid in like that, then it's like there has to be accountability and obviously performance metrics and KPIs and those sorts of things. But you have to think about the personality as well. In England in the past, I don't think I've ever really done this that well. Is you have to manage that person well at that age. He's obviously like, I don't know the kid, but he's obviously, he's very confident, but it's very easy at that age to douse that confidence, and people need to be managed in that situation. So it's like, how you respond to young players, particularly fly halves, people that have large amounts of control in a game when they lose, is far more important than how you manage them when they win. And that's where personalities and steel is won and resolved in young players. It's not, you don't get it when you win games. Anyone can be happy when you win a game. It's how you're treated when you lose one. And I think that how he's managed in these situations now is really important. He's young, he's impressionable. He's going to be at that stage. This is a stage where Cipriani went, one way or the other, by and large. And he was managed okay in some situations. Some situations he managed badly, and some situations he managed himself poorly. But I think management at this age for the young guys that need that level of confidence where they play is really important. So hopefully they don't judge him on that game, or it doesn't sort of blot his copybook too permanently. But I think if you believe in someone, you've got to put time into them. You've got to expect them to break some eggs as well on the way.
Are you more worried about that in the sense that, so the loss to Scotland when he was at 10, he was then obviously booted out. He then had the 9-second Wales cameo or whatever, which was just ridiculous, and then didn't get off the bench against Ireland, if I'm remembering correctly. Are you a little bit concerned then that it's the former and that the management hasn't necessarily been the best than the latter?
I think that's a very good question, and one that I probably don't have a very accurate answer to. I don't know whether at that stage they went into damage limitation mode after the France result, and they were just sort of locked everything down, and they wanted to keep everything very, very simple, and they wanted to regroup after the Six Nations, which is very possible. And they think, fuck it, rather than because that also would have been very unlike Borthwick to go, fuck it, we've lost it, let's just stick the boys in. And he was still wanting to have kept an element of control and discipline, even though they were on a hiding to very little in that Six Nations. So we will see, right? Well, there'll be a lot's going to come out in a wash the next 3 or 4 months. I think we'll see an awful lot about how they want to approach things, but I'd like to think that that's not, baby out with the bathwater situation. And I don't think the level of involvement that he had should be an indication as to that, because I just think that there would have, many sides would have gone trialing young players and changed the whole team around, but that's just not Borthwick's style. He still would have wanted to have kept an element of control and discipline and order despite what had happened. So
the last time I can remember, actually, and I mean, I'm sure there have been incidents since, but the way you described the perfect storm, that seemed to me to be an accurate summing up of back in 2007 at the World Cup, when you were injured after the first game, and they had that South Africa game, and England lost 36-0, and England have lost heavily in the years since, but I can't remember a game until that France game this year where everything was so great. You couldn't see after the first few minutes where England were going to win the game at all. They weren't competitive in the game at all. And that was a perfect storm, partly driven by injury, because you didn't have a fly half on the field from memory. But it was a perfect storm, as you describe. How crucial is it for people not to panic after a single 80 minutes like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously crucial. I suppose it's like, I mean, only the people internally know how damaging that is, right? Like, you don't know whether that's, maybe they've got into that. I played in games where you got into the week and you think, fuck, we're in good nick, and then you get belted by 30, 40 points, So like, sometimes that just can happen, and that sounds very, very dismissive and blasé, but sometimes that just actually can happen. Those situations whereby you play incredibly badly and the team plays incredibly well are quite rare, standards, margins now are so small. Teams perform in such a very small median these days between being pretty good and really good, that those results don't happen very often, a massive international level. So it's just how you react from them. Are you able to? Are the boys rocked by it? Are they well-rounded enough to see it as just as I said, a perfect storm, and that was a fucking once in a lifetime situation? Or deep down in the squad, are people more nervous than we know? We just don't know this. We don't know these things. Maybe you guys do as press, but you get a feeling. But they'll obviously, it's not beat around the bush. They'll tell you what you want to hear. In these situations, they're not going to go and tell you the truth. Why would they? I'm not at all saying that things are on the ropes, but my point is, Chewy, is like, until you know what the conversations in people's rooms, in the changing rooms, when they're having a beer afterwards, until you know what those conversations are like, it's very hard to know whether the boys are going, fuck, we were unlucky, we're still a wicked team, or are they saying, well, man, like that was going to happen. That was on the cards to happen. You don't know that. But I mean, I'd like to think that boys, there's enough cohesion and leadership there from Borthwick for boys to think that that was just a really, really shit day, and we will be better.
And rugby's full of that, isn't it? I mean, it's only just over a week ago, Leicester were coming home from Dublin with a hell of a thump in there, and then they bounced back yesterday, record score against Exeter. I mean, if you can have that maturity to know that you're going to have swings like that occasionally, it's okay. But if it sort of preys on your mind, then that can be a bit more dangerous.
Yeah, mate, massively. And that comes back to our first conversation. That's the culture thing. It's like, are we on the right track? Do we believe in what we're doing? Do we all back each other? And if you have those three things, then you can survive massive losses, because you're like, fuck, we just had a bad day, and then you go back to Monday and you kind of like shirk it off, and you're like, that was just one of those things, but I believe in you, I believe in the coach, I believe in where we're going. That was just a shit day, and they're going to happen. And then you crack on Monday and you produce that sort of result we just spoke about. Or you coming in and everyone starts bitching, and actually people are saying, well, no wonder we lost, because no one believes in that system or that move, and why we don't know. That's a very, very different camp, and that's when things start to go downhill quite quickly. But we will see. I think then Borthwick will weed that out very, very quickly. I don't think that will be the case at all within the England team. I think there'll be, he will want buy-in from the players. He's not the sort of guy that will go, this is how we're playing, and you will like it, or I will get someone else in. That's just not his style. He's smart enough and human enough to want to create a style and a strategy and a culture that everyone believes in. And I think that hopefully answers the question. I hope that the people will see it as just a shit day.
Ollie, we'll let you go then. Thank you so much for joining. That's been a really, really interesting discussion, and good luck with the rum. And especially, I don't know where in London you're moving to, but good luck with the move tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you all.
It's nice to see you, Ollie.
You too, boys. If you two have a good day, and hope to see you soon.
Take care, most
of you. Thanks for listening to this week's edition of the Rugby Paper podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on whichever podcast platform you use and recommend the show to your friends. The Rugby Paper is available to buy every Sunday. And to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe through our print, digital and online options at therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions. That's therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions to get all our content for as little as 14p per day.